Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card video. Today I'm doing some pattern stamping with this bold flower set by Simon Says Stamp. I'm also using the Big Thanks die set, and I'm going to use that as a drop shadow. I wanted to try out some of my new Stampin' Up! Colors. I have Gorgeous Grape, Balmy Blue, Grainy Apple Green, and then my old Daffodil Delight. I'm going to use my MISTI because it'll make my pattern stamping much easier. For the first image, I'm going to place my stamp pretty much center inside the MISTI, and I'm going to make a note of where the right edge of my cardstock is, so it's at 2 3/4 inches. I purposely made my stamp off center so it wouldn't be completely symmetrical. Once I get the stamp on the lid, I'm going to make sure I place my cardstock back where I started, which was at 2 3/4, and I'm going to start with the green ink and stamp it down. Next, you need to determine the perfect spacing for each of these stamps. So to do this, I just eyeballed it and moved my cardstock around, put my lid down, and sort of did this until I had it perfectly the way I wanted it for the distance between each stamp. Then I made a note of the measurement at the bottom, and then I moved it that same distance every single time. For my stamp, it's 1 1/8 inches. So I moved it 1 1/8 to the left, I stamped the purple, and now I went back to center, and now I'm moving 1 1/8 to the right, and stamp my next color, which is the yellow, and then one more time, 1 1/8 to the right, and then I'll stamp my last color, which is going to be the Balmy Blue. My stamp is not a perfectly round stamp, so I have to make sure that to maintain this 1 1/8 of an inch, I've got to orient it the same way every single time. So what I've done is I've made my cardstock flush with the bottom, and then I've made my grid sheet flush with the left, and then I'm going to place it right over one of the ones I've already stamped. And then I can simply move my grid sheet upward, and I know that my stamp will be oriented the exact same way. So I'm going to position the cardstock behind it so that this new stamp is going to be between the two stamps I've already done on this first row. And now I'm going to make a note of where the right edge of my cardstock is. I'm just going to put a post-it there to remind me just in case I forget. And now I am positioned for all the stamps in this second row. The first 2 rows are the hardest, and then after that it's a piece of cake. For the color pattern, I'm going to stamp the color that's 2 to the left of where I'm stamping currently, and that's how I matched up my colors. And then I just used that same pattern from the first row on the second row. Now I'm going to look where my post-it is, and notice I can't go to the left to stamp that right edge because there's not enough space, so I'll just fill that in later. Now I'm going to move it 1 1/8 of an inch to the right based on my post-it where I started, and I'll stamp my Balmy Blue, and again one more time to the right, 1 1/8 inches, and then I'll stamp my purple. And you can see that I'm going to have to go in later on and stamp those 2 edge flowers, but that's not a big deal. My third row is easy to line up because it's exactly the same as the first row. So I'm going to again put my grid sheet flush with the left and position over one of the flowers in the first row. And then all I have to do is move my grid sheet perfectly straight up and position it right over that other row that I did. And then now I'm set up for all the flowers in this third row. And then as far as color, 2 to the left is purple, so that's the one I'm going to start with. Doing the same thing with this row all the way across, 1 1/8 of an inch each time. This fourth row under the first row is going to be the same as the second row. So I'm just going to mark where this is at the bottom. I didn't do this last time because I just sort of mentally remembered it, but I think it's safest to just put your post-it at the bottom just in case you forget. All right, so I'm going to match one of the flowers in that second row. So I'll position my stamp exactly right. Remember, I'm doing this because my stamp is not perfectly round and it has to be oriented the same way every time. Now I'll move down, figure out where it needs to go vertically, and now I'll close my lid to start my fourth row. Because I'm doing the row underneath, there was a little question as to which color I should use. But if you notice, I have purple, green, and yellow right above where my finger is, and that means blue needs to be right there. And then once again, I'll move this 1 1/8 every time and stamp that row. I'm going to move to that top row now, which is the same as that second row. I'm just going through this same process every single time. I'm hanging off the edge this time, but no big deal. I'll put a piece of scratch paper underneath. Now when it comes time to doing the other last row at the bottom there, I'm going to have to flip my cardstock because I can't hang it off the bottom of the MISTI. but that's fine. It's all going to work the same exact way, except for my flower is just going to be upside down, but it works the same way, it doesn't matter. I'm going to finish this off by filling in those edge flowers by hand. I'm going to position it over one of those flowers and then put it onto my block while my block is perfectly level with my cardstock. So as long as my block is perfectly aligned with my cardstock, every time I stamp, it's going to be in the same orientation. And that finishes up the background. It looks really pretty. I love this color combination. Stampin' Up! Has some good colors this year. I've cut the top thanks in white and the shadow in black. I'll take my white thanks, put some 2A glue on the back, and what I'm going to do here is rather than put it in the center of the black, I'm going to put it right up against the upper left edge of my black thanks. So I'm not hanging off the edge. My white is perfectly on top of my black. It's just in the very top left edge. So I'm going to work my way across. Sorry for my head, but it's really hard to do unless you're right on top of it. And by doing this, now you get a drop shadow look rather than centering the white, and it looks really cool. When I'm putting a sentiment on a busy background that I don't want to cover up, I'll put my sentiment on some vellum so it kind of blurs the background a little bit so my sentiment will stand out. I'm going to trim my flower panel to 4 by 5 1/4. I'll put some 2A glue on the back of the thanks with the vellum, and then I'll adhere that over some of the flowers kind of toward the bottom a little bit, so off center. I'm going to get rid of that excess vellum, and then I'll put some Scotch foam on the back of this flower panel and pop it up onto a Nina Solar white card base. I left a little bit of a white border around it. I had black, but it was a little bit too much contrast, so I stuck with the white. And that is the card for today. So I hope you enjoyed that, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.